Hello, everyone, and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Australian Survivor v World. I'm your host, Shannon Guss, here for another pre-season podcast on this world tour. We are going to be talking about a Survivor South Africa winner and a Chizzy winner, and I'm thought, who better to speak about that with a Survivor South Africa winner and Chizzy winner? It is a great Dino. Dino, thank you for being here.
Hey, Shannon. Thanks for having me as always. Really, really enjoy chatting with you about all things Survivor.
Yeah, I'm upset to be chatting with you and not about you, to be fair. I mean, I'm happy to talk about Rob, but why couldn't we have both,
Things happen as they should. Let's just say that, I guess.
Only you. I mean, I feel like, okay. Yeah, I mean, they have like a big super fan in Lisa, but how many days do you survive of pure not, like, how soon do you faint getting onto the island with like a Tony, and like a Surrey? Like, I feel like maybe for your health, maybe that's why you were spared. I
No,
assume
for sure.
hyperventilation.
I would have just been there to do everybody else's bidding. I'd have been like, yes, Lord Poverty, yes, Lord Tony, yes, like, hello, Lisa. Like, I would have been okay. Probably a little bit less enamored with Tommy and Cassandra, but yeah, I think I would have been a little overwhelmed as a fan for sure.
Yeah, well, we are here to talk about Rob Bentele, who is the Survivor South Africa representation on this season. And that's so interesting because I feel like, with Survivor South Africa on this hiatus, it's, the chance to see someone from Survivor South Africa that we haven't had in years. He's the only winner who's had a chance to come back on Survivor South Africa because obviously the season you won, the returning season, was no winner. So this has been his only returning opportunity, and he is back. He's someone that I feel like Australian Survivor would gravitate to because he's like this massive Adonis of a man, which again, present company included. What were you thinking, Australian Survivor production? But they went with Rob Bentele, and he played what we called one of the most dominant games of all time. And I do feel like a lot of the listeners maybe didn't see Rob's season. So give a little bit of a brief intro to Rob Bentele for people who don't know him yet.
So it's Rob's an interesting one, right? You don't often see somebody who's not necessarily a fan of the game enter the game and have such a good grasp on the social aspect of the game. He has this really good-looking Adonis of a man, like you call him, who's got this insane charisma and charm, and he's able to like wield that throughout the season. To eventually win the game, right? So he's got a good sense of, again, like a Kirby Bentley who wasn't a fan of the game, but had a really good understanding of the strategy and a very quickly adapted to the strategy of the game. So I'd call him a very natural player and a very natural game player. I mean, Rob, as we say, the most dominant of winners in the SA franchise, very quickly amassed a following, a cult-like following, not just in the early days of the game, but even later on in the game where he was only introduced to certain players at Merge, very quickly followed him like a cult. So I would refer to him as a very well-rounded, incredibly well-rounded, maybe a bit too well-rounded player. He's got the strategic chops, he's got the social chops, and physically he's a beast. He's an absolute beast.
Yeah, he's the kind of player where it's like, how did you let that guy win? Because when you look at him, he's so clearly going to win that you don't let him win, right? That's Survivor. Survivor is like, don't be the most charismatic. Don't be the most physical. Like, don't be that guy that's like 15 out of 10, because then you'll get swiped, especially in like a, 39-day game, and you're going to lose. But with Rob, he was able to be the extremes of everything and then push through that domination to win. And I feel like we see that, like, you can think of like it's really kind of similar to me for the US Survivor watchers to like a Boston Rob's game. Boston Rob as well, like, wasn't going to get a lot of love from the jury necessarily next to everyone. Like, he pissed people off, but he was that controlling. Like, people were hard done by it, but they also had to like respect the game in kind of a different jury vote setup than Rob got. Rob wins 6-4, and Boston Rob obviously does a lot better than that. But I do think that it's a very similar cult-like game like that, and it is like, he's not on the margins of like ducking and weaving or like balancing anything. He was just so dominant across the board. We'll talk about the highlights, but making up, different strategies to keep people in line. So socially charismatic. I mean, in my deep dive with him, that's how I felt like when I interviewed him. Physically winning 5 challenges, many rewards. He was just so dominant, and yet they let him win. And I think that speaks to what he was able to pull off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you say, as we get into the details, we'll unpack where those traits of being strong in certain areas really paid off. Like the social interactions early on to form those incredibly tight alliances, and it's also a reflection on the people he aligned with. Good choice in people early on, so good read of people, good understanding, and vice versa. They obviously gravitated towards him, and that's what sets him up in the early game through to some strategic plays to try and protect himself when he could have been a little bit exposed. Methods may be somewhat questionable if we're thinking shark scenarios, but they. And then late game, the physical dominance really protected him. When he was at risk of becoming exposed. So yeah, I mean, I'm keen to unpack his journey, and I guess start betting on how he'll do or how he'd be received in this new cast.
Yeah, to talk about some of the highlights of how much the cult was culting for Rob and the Amigos. And I do often say that Rob did it alone. When you kind of look back at winners who really had these big individual wins, he did have Nicole with him. But I think the thing for me with Rob is he was so out in front. I think he only received 3 votes, but he was also so often immune. When they were getting called out, I feel like Rob was often getting called out. He was taking the bullets, but protecting it. And also no one on the bottom could really pierce him. They would work it out just that little bit too late, or maybe on the way out the door, that he'd been playing them the entire time. But if they were in their dying breaths screaming about the people on the top, it was at Rob. So I really feel like Rob was the one maintaining and dominating in a way that to me was pretty individual, and that leads to the win. But yeah, to talk about the cult, so many things, So as an example, something we always talk about is he went to the Island of Secrets, which was the theme of the season, came back and lied and made up an advantage, which he said he could view votes. I think it was 2 votes. And he tells Mike, who is an ally, very close. Rob was a close ally to Mike. Mike was tier B for Rob, but everyone was aligned with Rob. Everyone thought they were really close with Rob. And even when he thought about maybe turning on Rob, but then he can view the votes. It was this made up surveillance that he used to keep people in line, keep Mike in line. Yes. And we really liked that at the time because we felt, okay, well, cool idea. And also as a winner, he really represented the theme of Island of Secrets because he used it in such a novel way. Then we have another example that I think is really interesting was that Jacques, perennial underdog, who constantly was kind of pissing off the majority because he was irritating to them. He would bluff his idol and then not play it for tribal councils on end, which we'll talk about in a way that irritated the majority. But at one point he played it. He played it before the votes were cast, and it was accepted, which I don't think it should have been, production-wise, probably. Anyway, not here to criticize production. But it was certified, I think, that he would be playing the idol. He wanted to go for Rob. No one votes for Rob. In fact, a couple of people who were in that middle tier, a Mike and a Marba, actually end up
voted for Jacques. So knowing that the votes would be nullified.
Yeah, that was the
level of trust. Yeah.
Yeah, it was do you want to vote for Rob? Do you want to try do something on Rob with Jacques? Or do you want to keep voting for someone who is immune, who is literally I'm not bluffing here. I've played the idol, I'm immune. They chose to vote for him, and then Marba goes home because Jacques was immune. So the majority had this plan over the top. But the people in the middle did not even then try to come for him. And then I think the third thing that we think always defines the entire season, and Rob so much defines the season, so it defines Rob's game, was that Jacques had pissed them all off so much at one of the tribal councils. I think that tribal council.
Yes,
that
mother effer. Mother effer. Yes. I'm coming for the biggest mother effer.
Yes, he said the word mother effer. We called it the Mother Jacques incident.
Mother Jacques, yes.
Yes, we've also said that it defines the season. I think it does. He came back after. He was hyped up on getting this kind of win. Was it that? It must have been the Marba Tribal Council. I don't know. There were so many tribal councils where Jacques was bluffing and using the idol in different ways.
It was, against us, if I remember correctly, it was that one because I think it was at 8 or something like that, and that would have taken him down to 7.
To 7, then Jacques goes, yeah.
And he says, I'm going to take down. He has this huge grandstanding play, which, to be fair, does put them in a predicament. And I think, to be fair to Jacques, could have very well turned up the heat on a Rob, because now he's off the table and people have to now start looking within their alliance or whatever they think or believe is their alliance, and hopefully make a move, which could have worked in Jacques' favor. So I don't think he did anything wrong in that play.
No.
But what they did is, and I think to understand, we can actually take this back a second, to understand what Rob's cult was founded on was this like loyalty and moral high ground. So, so especially with him and Nicole, you know, who would have been one of his closest allies throughout the game, there was this moral high ground throughout the game that they tended to take, and this moral view and this insane loyalty, and to a point where people have to start turning on themselves or turning on their own. They would have to morally justify it and find any moral reason. So, you know, when Jacques has a small slip up, like, well, I'm going to come for the biggest mother Jacques here,
which was
they
fine.
blow this, which, I mean, she's have a moment, and he still apologized about it and was like, oh, sorry guys, like, you know what, actually, he was completely ostracized and quite frankly bullied to the outskirts, high school bully beyond that, which was quite tough to see.
It was really hard to watch.
But it was this like, and I think even people who might not have felt as, let's call it, convicted to those extents, were so scared to step out of line and not uphold this moral value of this moment and not ostracize him, where they completely ignored Jacques. They wouldn't speak to him. No, they would pretend he didn't exist around camp. Like, it was bad, you know. And even those who probably had some sort of like a conscience in that moment to be like, okay, maybe this is a bit extreme, were too scared to be seen to be giving Jacques any grace because this cult was so strong. So the entire foundation was this moral, loyal game, which is, it can only be upheld so far, right?
Yeah, so like to take it back, so he had done something, like he had like kind of upset the majority by fighting for his life in a way that they were still this like relentless majority, right? Like they still had all the power, but he had, you know, he'd gotten his way and played the idol before and upset their plans. And he, in like a moment of victory afterwards, comes back and he says the word Mother Jacques, but not. And at the time, Mike and I had to be like, not Mike Bloom, not the Mike on the season. We had to be like, does this mean something different in South Africa? Is this like a slur in South Africa that he said something like this? And we had to be told by many people that it wasn't. Like, it just means mother effer, right? And he swore, okay, like, I mean, I'm not going to moralize it.
And it can even be said. It can even be said in an endearing way. Not that it was said in an endearing way, but it wasn't said like as a. It wasn't said as a very personal attack either. It was said as like a, I'm coming for the biggest threat out here. Like in the same way, it was like to emphasize the size of the threat, not to emphasize that somebody's actually going to go around and bang your mom.
Yeah, he wasn't like, you are a blank. You know, he was literally using it as a term. And as we've said, like the level of kind of the, you know, bullying really that he received. And from my memory, it was kind of like, it was like the Amigos personified. From my memory, like Steffi was very like angry, like very like aggressive against him. And Nicole was very much like, you're a bad person. And Rob led a lot of the ostracizing. And as you said, everyone else in the cult, from my memory, went along with it. Like he couldn't sleep in the shelter. And like the way that he talked about it in the deep dive, I still remember, like it completely broke him beyond the game. This is not making Rob sound good, by the way, for the people who have, we'll talk about it, you know, who haven't heard about Rob. But I do think it is important because that was the tone. As you said, it was really compelling, actually. I remember even watching like the jury villas, like it was quite a toxic season. It was incredibly personal, it was incredibly heated, and it was incredibly moral, as you said. I think that's the perfect word for it. Where, you know, if you went against the family, you were swiped. If you even thought about going, they would come for you 100 times harder. Like CPay, I think, who was in the Amigos, is a great example of that, and she gets taken out really early in the merge and blindsided. And yeah, there was this just really big sense of, if you go against, you know, our sense of morality and loyalty in any way, and if we can justify it, then like we'll do back at you like, you know, 100 times more. And I think that, you know, obviously whenever anyone does this on Survivor, it's very hypocritical because, as we said, they were all playing everyone like a fiddle, you know, like they were lying to everyone. But if anyone kind of comes against us, this like, again, this big Adonis Amigos group, which they were, then they're objectively wrong because we're allowed to play the game and they're not. And that was, I think, the tone of the season. And I do think that was a big part of Rob's game. But then maybe we'll get into some positives so people don't just like hate this guy from the get-go. But yeah, when I'm talking about it, that was the tone.
Yeah, so I mean, earlier on when I said, okay, cool, there's moves that might be questionable in terms of our standpoint now, but they were effective, right? And it wasn't all. It was. I mean, this was a moment in the game, right? This was a moment in the game. It doesn't define the entire game or his entire game. But I love the way you talk about it.
Because it was so much
it's so problem.
It was so much. It was so like textbook. It was exactly.
I'm trying to say. But yeah, I love the way that you describe it as this family, and he was like this again charismatic, charming leader, cult leader. But when you describe it as the family, I think of like the Don and the mafia, and it was very much the mafia boss that didn't get got, and kudos to you, because when you're in that position early on, it's all well and dandy, but eventually you start having the Dantes come for you, the players like a CPA eventually go like, this is not how I win this game, and I'm going to have to make moves, and then eventually it's going to be the people closest to you, the Steffies, the Nicoles, that eventually want to turn on you, but just don't find that gap, and somehow you are able to outlast even when your closest turn on you, because those are the only people that are going to have access to actually make a move on you. So I mean, full credit to him for being able to play that game where eventually your threat level just gets so freaking massive, but you're still able to negate any sort of attack that might come your way. It's unreal, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the perfect example of that is the final 5. I mean, it was like, take out Rob, take out Rob, take out Rob. People didn't want to do it. So he had that like extreme loyalty. He was also winning. He won 5 challenges and I think 3 of them late. So he was very protected, but people weren't really coming from anyway. So it's like, we'll do it at the final 5. Well, he's probably going to win the challenge at the final 5, which he did. He had an idol he has to play, which he plays, I think, for Nicole. He won immunity. And also, Nicole, I don't think was really turning on him. Like Nicole comes back, and I can't remember the order of operations there, if like she turns because he's protected, or if she was always going to be loyal and maybe. Yeah.
She started going like, okay, cool. Opening the idea. She was quite receptive to Steffi, because Steffi's the one that comes up and says, okay, cool, listen, let's go, it's time. And Nicole was very receptive to it. And then as soon as Rob wins immunity and is a not a target, Nicole turns and goes, hey, by the way, actually, Steffi's coming for you, as if she was never going to do it in the first place, which I think she was actually quite open to take a shot. She ends up protecting herself, and then that's their moral standpoint for taking out one of their closest allies, Steffi, but in a way that shocks and kind of, it's not going to make them sound good again, but they set it up in a way that kind of humiliates Steffi in a way to shock and surprise her, where everybody's now going to be immune with all their trinkets, and Steffi's going to be left out of the loop, and haha, you try to come for me, but we got you first, kind of thing. So I think Nicole was very much on board with the move to take out Rob, because she could see the physical threat and the challenge of trying to beat somebody like this at the end in many ways, whether it be physically, socially. But him being him, he wins this immunity, comes in clutch when he needs to come in, and his allies come back to him and go like, well, they'd rather work with him than against him, because he's got the power. So well, man,
that vote.
No, I'm just saying, what a position to be in, where people are desperate to go for you. Desperate, but they just can't find that gap anymore. Maybe they should have listened to Dante. Who would have thought?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the 3 tenets of the game. I feel like you can see in that final 5. Like, if they were going to turn on him, they never got the opportunity to, because he had so much loyalty that they were, and A, was protected, but also had so much loyalty that they weren't thinking about it until way too late. So that's like the, social aspect. Then there's the fact that they were like going to have to convince him away from even playing his own idol that he had. At the last time you could play an idol, that's the strategic aspect, if we can kind of like break it down into the pillars. And also then he won immunity and was likely to win immunity, was winning all the immunities, and that's the physical aspect. So that, I think, is like shows the comprehensive 3-pronged, you were never getting Rob out at 5. Actually, he's turned it around on Steffi. And the thing that's interesting as well is that Steffi was part of the Amigos, going, anyone who betrayed them or anyone who was disloyal, like coming for them in this moral way. And then when Steffi was going to do it, she gets got. So it's like everyone's part of the machine until they step out and then they get got by the machine. And the machine was always Rob. And I think that that's very much the theme of the season. From the beginning, the Amigos are created in the pre-swap. And then, you know, he goes through a swap.
The Amigos were created at the Waterwell on day one.
Yeah, wow, yeah.
It was like one of the first conversations around the well. Nathan, Rob, Steffi, Nicole, and it held. It was strong. And if you remember early on in the game, Nathan actually wanted to leave the game, so wanted to get voted out, and Nicole actually has to let him go when Rob, Nicole aren't in the same. To describe Rob and Nathan in the game, they were like brothers in the game. They've very quickly created a very, very strong bond that felt very much like it transcended the game into the real world kind of thing. And Rob became very protective over him, like you would be of your younger sibling, you know. And Nathan was a bit clumsy, good-looking chap, super able, really likable, super charming, but super clumsy and kept hurting himself, you know. And Rob was there to literally sweep him off his feet and carry him when he needed to carry him, you know, and in the literal sense. But Nathan eventually makes this weird exit, you know, on the same tribe as Nicole. And, you know, Rob has this conversation with Nicole and is like, hey, you know, how does this happen? And Nicole's kind of like, I'm still loyal to this, and has to kind of give Rob this context, but still maintains the trust with Rob. And that's how deep this loyalty from that Amigos 4 ran was. It was like,
until it didn't.
Until it didn't, yeah. But there was no turning on the Amigos. There was no, even if the Amigo was turning on himself, there was no turning on the Amigos, you know?
Yeah. Well, but then Cipe, she's the first Amigo to get got because she's putting it out there that she might. I don't even think it was for Rob, right? It was for the girls, and they were like, and they also do it in this humiliating way, right? Like she has like a half idol, and they like get it from her. Like everything was at 150%. Like to describe the season, okay? But people didn't see the season. And I hope I'm characterizing well because I haven't watched it in 6 years. But like in my mind, like the Amigos were this like Amazonian, like beautiful, like tall, like the best looking alliance you've ever seen of these like clear threats who just like monstered the entire game. And if one of them stepped out of line, they'd come for themselves even harder. And then Rob won. Finn, right? Is that a fine characterization?
It is pretty much. I mean, the one thing you say like Cipe in the Amigos, but Cipe was a later addition to the original Amigos. Early days, she wasn't in the crowd, right? It's quite funny. It's the Saula tribe as a whole was this like model, and you talk about the Amazonian, like they were the good-looking, physical, beautiful, charismatic tribe, you know. Even Paul Smulders, who was, you know, one of the older, just between him and Neil for the oldest on the Letitia, who was near on her deathbed, obviously might have been older, but
58, yes.
According to Rob, she was on her deathbed. So yeah, but I mean, even Paul Smulders, who was one of the older gentlemen, top 3 on the cast. I mean, he's and he still is to this day in like this incredible physical nick, and you know, so this tribe was like perfection, and we actually expected them to dominate everything pre-merge, but they lost the first 2 challenges, even with all their like physical prowess and brains and whatnot. They just couldn't get it together. But yeah, aside from that, I mean, the alliance within that tribe absolutely just steamrolled the entire competition, and not because there wasn't competition. I mean, they came up against like some really astute players. Like, you know, Dante was incredibly perceptive. Maybe his methods of delivering his viewpoints weren't well received, but he had a very good understanding of the social dynamics of the game, you know, and he could call out where the threats were. Meryl, super charming, incredible social game, very strategic, absolute student of the game, knew the game. You know, this is a tough player to play against. Jacques, student of the game. Mark V, lifelong fan of the game. Okay, questionable moves, maybe a bit of youth on his side and naivety didn't play into his favor, but a lifelong fan of the game. Jeff Cook-Tonninson, lifelong fan of the game. You know, these weren't like people playing against random recruits. This was somebody who was not a fan of the game, outplaying hardcore fans of the game because their skill set just lends itself to like an incredible gameplay just because he's so naturally charming, charismatic, smart, physically imposing. So as much as we're saying like he steamrolled this, and people talk about sometimes the season being a bit too linear for them because this machine, as you call it, steamrolls to the end, you've got to admire the fact that it's not due to a lack of gameplay on anybody else's parts. It's just how incredible this machine was that he assembled.
I think it's probably the best first time player game ever. And that's what I've always come to with it. And we can talk about it because, I have been talking about it with like Dave and Tony and Rob, who all played within a year, within 9 months, in what I think might be, maybe with Kim, like the 3 best games in Global Survivor history. The 3 most individually dominant games in these really interesting ways. I mean, Tony as Against All Winners, Dave doing it alone for 50 days, and Rob just, again, on his first time, again with first timers, but good first timers, as you've said. They were smart people. They came back on your season, they did well. Like these were good players, and Rob just dominated so comprehensively. And I think that's why it's kind of in this other tier for me. But so they go to those first 2 tribal councils, but then Rob only goes back to tribal council once in the pre-merge. And I think that, the post-swap tribe, the first post-swap tribe that he's in, which don't go to tribal council, but I think there's the rivalry that with Dante that starts. And it's interesting to kind of look at how that might be with some of the other alpha males on this season coming up, because I think what would happen with Rob, I mean, there was a big, like, massive war between Dante and Rob the whole time, but certainly what would happen at the merge is people would realize that they were realized at a point, and maybe they would scream about it for longer, like a Dante or a Jacques had more time to kind of know that, but like people would at some point realize they were like victims of this machine, and then start being like, wake up, like you're next, and people wouldn't believe them, and they would just be kind of like yelling into the void when Rob was so protected. And I feel like Dante to me encapsulates that more than kind of anything, because he and Rob really had this rivalry that Rob, like the season, comprehensively won. But I do look back at that. Like, it's not like people weren't talking about it. Like, people were yelling about it, but it was usually on their way out.
So just to go back to a point where you talk about individually dominant winners, and I think it's both, and it's not to discredit him, it's also to credit him, to say that I wouldn't call his individually dominant. He wins at a 6-4 vote for a very good reason that it was so close. It's because Nicole is such a huge part of this. And yes, we get to see his winner edit, but I think Nicole is so integral to it. So like he didn't do this on his own, and that's why it was so dominant, is because he didn't do this on his own. It's by his own doing that he's able to be a part of assembling this incredible machine. And he and Nicole really set the tone for the season, set the moral standpoint for the season. It really was the 2 of them, and Nicole was that web of information. She had the closest relationships with everybody in the game. She was the one that was actually closer to a wider range of players than what Rob was, right? And she got her hands a little bit dirtier because she built deeper bonds with people, and because people felt more betrayed by her. That's why he gets off a little bit lighter, is because he didn't have as close a bond with as many people. The bonds he had might have been deep with a smaller set, but Nicole really carries a lot of that relationship and information. But again, credit to Rob, is aligning with the right type of players, using their skill sets, and having that type of player trust in you. So it's almost like a discredit to a number of other players to say it's so individually dominant. And it's also a discredit to him to say it's so individually dominant when he had assembled. It's almost like this weird paradox. And I go in my head, I'm like, okay, but that's what makes him so individually dominant, is that he did all these things, but he couldn't do it without the people, and the people is what makes it. But he assembled the people, therefore, I think you get what I'm trying to say. But it was like, yeah.
I think it's hard with Nicole. I mean, I called him individually dominant on the David podcast that may or may not be released when this is out. Clearly, the wheels are turning here on in this podcast series. We know what's going on, but I think the Nicole stuff is hard. Like, your mileage may vary, and clearly mine does. She was clearly connecting with people in a way that was important. She does get 4 votes of 10. But I remember, like, I was shocked by that, right? So, and maybe that speaks to the fact that Rob can't pull off, more votes at that point and only win 6-4 against Nicole. But I think with me, it's like, I never felt like Nicole could win. Like, Nicole had, like, big Angelina energy, said with love. But that's what she was. Like, there was like a ridiculousness, right? Like, Nicole's the one who's like, we're going to do this female empowerment thing against Rob. And then she's the one who says at the end that the female empowerment is actually sticking with Rob. And you look, feminism is, I guess, about choice, but I just don't know if that's the choice that we look back on as being like the one for female empowerment. So I think there were so many things with Nicole that were funny and ridiculous. Like, she was a very important part of it. But I guess I just never saw her as like a potential winner. So for me, if you're going to the end, the thing that was for me is like, if Rob's going to the end to win, right? And to be fair, he won by a slimmer margin than I gave Nicole credit for. So I have to look at that. But if I see him as definitely going to beat Nicole, I'm looking at 2 games of someone who's empowering someone to win or winning. You know what I mean? So it's like, everyone was lamb to the slaughters. Everyone was a lamb to Rob's eventual slaughter. And you can look at the fact that Nicole's doing it with Rob, but also you might also look at her like she had agency, she was doing her own things, but you could also look at her like a bit of a puppet doing things to empower Rob to win. If she can't get Rob because he was so protected, or if she's missing her shot on that, or if she wasn't going to do it at the right time, then it's hard for me to credit that as like a duo. And I guess it's hard because you do look at like a JT and Steven, and they were definitely a duo, and Steven missed his opportunity to take out JT. But I kind of feel like that the want for that was a little bit more there for Nicole. You know, I mean, for Steven than Nicole. I mean, it's hard for me to credit a plan where the plan was, if he doesn't win immunity, we'll convince him not to play his idol. Maybe there's not enough there. Whereas like Steven needed JT to lose, you know, 1 of 3 challenges, and then Steven probably wins the game. Nicole's, like, her win potential was so slight, and everything else she was doing was enabling this other winning game of one of the most dominant players we've ever seen. And the opportunity that she had was so small, and she missed it. And what was that opportunity? That opportunity was never going to happen. Like, he had an idol. Like, it was done, you know?
We're going slightly off track here, but at Final 5...
No, I love it. Yeah.
You still think, I mean, because you got Steffi, Nicole, Letitia, Durao, Rob.
Rob has an idol.
That was the Final 5, right?
Yeah.
Which, given their cult-like following and belief and moralistic, let's say, their loyalty, that's the word I'm actually looking for, given their loyalty to each other, it was fathomable that he might not play his idol for himself just to prove a point. It was fathomable.
If he win a challenge that he's high odds on favorite to win, which he did.
Okay. Or you get to Final 4 and he doesn't win. Like, do you still think that Nicole's win equity wasn't higher than anybody else's, aside from Rob? Or do you think everybody was just on a hiding to nothing? Let's say they do get Rob out. Do you think she still doesn't go on to win the game?
I think that she's mostly playing for Rob's win. Like, yes, those are opportunities where like Rob could lose at 4. Rob could not play his idol at 5. I don't really give that anything. Yeah. Rob could lose at 5, maybe. Even were they all voted out Rob at 4? Was that even what was happening? I mean, I don't know. At that point, Steffi goes at 5. But she's not turning on Rob if he loses at 4, right?
I think she is.
Not at that point. Not at the point where she's been like, you betrayed the amigos to Steffi. I love how we're having this argument about a season I haven't watched in since. Okay, so Rob wins.
But either way, like,
I don't see Rob. I don't remember her turning on Rob at 4. That wasn't my recollection of that. And also, yes, these were like tiny little opportunities. Maybe like she's missing the boat. Like, to me, if there are 2 partners playing for Rob's win, that's Rob's game. You know what I mean? And
look, I think
yeah,
anyone who aligned with Rob in that season, and that's kind of where I had like a penny drop moment, is you saying like you felt like they were playing for his win. Like anybody who really aligned with him really felt like, in terms of what we could see through the screen, we're playing for his win in the end, because everybody fits it into his gameplay and not the other way around. Like, they adapted to his style. They were welcomed into his alliance and they did his bidding. You know, like Durao is another great case. You know, somebody who didn't necessarily have this great agency in the game, but found safety and security under the wing of Rob, and Rob masterfully uses Durao because other people might not have seen that happening because they had very limited time in the game, because they only met at Merge or they were only on the same tribe at Merge. But Durao very quickly becomes another informant and another source of information, incredible information for Rob, that, you know, if a Nicole or a Steffi wasn't being truly honest with him, he had somebody else, another set of eyes and ears on the ground for him. So he definitely, I mean, then that goes back to what you're saying in terms of like incredible individual dominant winner is that he had his options, man. He did well to have his options, and he had really good sources of information.
I love how I'm arguing about this Final Four vote. I don't remember the Final Four vote. This was 6 years ago. But my point is, the success that Rob had to get to that point is very different from the lack of success of letting him get there. Do you know what I mean? Like in a partnership, that has meaning, especially when, to be fair, I mean, I thought that it would be more of a blowout. So maybe I should give it more credit. Like if Nicole got that close, maybe I should put their games closer together. But for me, I just never ever felt like Nicole could beat Rob, and I felt like he was protecting so well. He was protecting so well individually, that we can say. And I do feel like so much enabled him. And if I talk about like thinking about like his levels of control, I think that first ring was like the amigos, like the close allies that were in ways, you know, like partners, but still kind of lifting up. If they were to like be successful as a group, it was going to be Rob's game. And then he had that like other outer layer of people who thought they were in his inner layer, like the Mikes and the Durals, who, and different people at different stages who had to be sacrificed at different stages, but who, again, were in like the Split Shaker 7 and like other alliances with him who thought they were really close to him, but they were like his, like, you know, his outer layer who were like his plan B. And then he had like a third layer of enemies, like the people that were like actively against him, like the Dantes and the Jacques. And he's at the center. And that's how I kind of see that season. But I mean, look, the Nicole Rob thing, it's an interesting debate. Not a debate I planned that, but I mean, I think people would have very different opinions of it. But for me, it's just like, there was so much control. And a lot of the stuff he was doing strategically, to be fair, was him. Like he came up with making up the vote view advantage from memory and stuff like that. But Nicole was the one who had these relationships. But again, like relationships to kind of aid Rob's game in my mind. How cancelled am I getting for this podcast? That's kind of how I thought. Well, but what do you make of the fact that it was 6-4 then? Because that to me was shocking. Like, what does that say about Rob as a player?
Look, I think it doesn't diminish Rob's gameplay at all. It definitely doesn't diminish. I think it just elevates the level of play that Nicole, it just elevates Nicole as a player more than diminishes Rob's gameplay. They were both phenomenal throughout. I mean, Nicole, again, also somebody who I would expect to see, like Nicole and Steffi on an Australian Survivor, you know, physical, big,
Amazonian.
good-looking, Amazonian, you know, got this really like athletic strength about them, but also socially incredible, charming, and strategic, so super smart. So really, the full package. If you see what I did there. So again, so I think it certainly doesn't diminish Rob's gameplay whatsoever. It elevates Nicole, and I think again to then sit next to a player like Nicole and still beat her 6-4, I think is a real credit to Rob in his gameplay, not a discredit. Because I hold them as players in terms of how dominant their gameplay was. I hold that gameplay in very high regard. I mean, it is not easy to be out there and be able to control the entire thing, the entire game start to end. And it's easy for us to sit back as fans and watch on the screen and nitpick like certain moments. But I can tell you,
very easy.
Being out there, and we can criticize. And this is why I want to say, like he was playing against super fans, and we can criticize the silly errors that some of the players made, but that wasn't because they were silly players. That was because they were forced into a position where they made poor judgment calls. And it's not, it's not for a lack of wanting to play or gameplay. These are players who went out there to play hard. And again, I just want to bring back to the fact, I mean, you keep mentioning like this advantage that he just created out of thin air. For a super fan to go into the game with having seen every single season, every type of advantage, to conjure up an advantage or call an advantage from recollection, to bluff with that is so much easier than somebody who isn't a fan of the game to make something up that then is believed by the cast. You know, you've got to give so much credit to that like level of ingenuity and innovation, and that's where I think Rob is a natural player, is an absolute natural. Which, I mean, now we've got to like look forward. I mean, this is what we're trying to do at this point. Well, at some point, is look forward and go like, well, how does this set him up for Australia versus the world, where you're playing against a lot of other natural players, as well as super fans, as well as well-seasoned veterans of the game?
No, I don't want to go forward. I want to keep arguing about Nicole versus Rob. Take it back to 2019. No, let's look forward. Let's look forward at AUV World, which is what we're here to do. It is interesting, as you said, like there's so many players on the season that are Rob-esque in they have never watched Survivor. Like this was, other than kind of Lisa, who again I don't think is a big fan of Australian Survivor itself. This was not the cast for fans. They were like, we want people who don't really love Survivor, right? We want people who are like franchise defining, but like we're gonna gain viewers from the show. Like, you know, we're gonna gain at least 14 international viewers from 14 people on the season who maybe otherwise wouldn't have watched it. Like that was kind of the casting strategy. And as you said, like Kirby Bentley, a similar last name, also didn't watch Survivor probably before or after, much like Rob. Shawnee's a big one like this. David, is David watching Survivor? Sarie's a big fan. You know, but yeah, and Lisa obviously, you know, she's a big fan of like US Survivor. But Rob's one of those players, one of the many on the season who I feel is going to be like, I don't, unless he's done his research, and maybe he has, and maybe people have done research on him, but I kind of feel like it's going to be like, I don't know who these people are, and they don't know me. Like they can assume. And the thing about Rob, which is so interesting, is like he's everything you would think he would be looking at him. Like, oh, how did you win Survivor? Did you just dominate the entire thing impossibly because there's no way you were under the radar? Like, yes, I did. There's no other way for that to go. So you kind of get Rob from just looking at him. But I do think it's very possible that, I mean, research on both ends of this is going to be pretty essential, I think, to the way Rob is received on the season.
I don't think any of these players going to the game, super fan or not, didn't do a level of research. Even if you were one of the bigger fans in of the show, and you'd already watched everybody else's seasons, or like people that, because there were a lot of lists out and there were a lot of names circulating, so it wasn't hard to try to do research on a number of people and minimize the amount of time or the number of seasons you have to watch to try and get a good scope on 80% of the cast, right? So I don't think anybody who was a fan didn't go rewatch seasons, and anybody like a Kirby and a Bentley didn't go watch them for the first time at the very least. You know, I think everybody would have done their level.
Kirby and a Bentley.
Kirby and a Rob. Kirby and a Rob. Sorry, yeah. The Bentele, the Bentley Bentele.
The Bentley Bentele alliance. It's manifested.
The Bentele alliance.
Yeah, love that. Done it.
Do we get to see this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, even if they had to, everyone has had to do a lot of research for the season because, again, no one was watching the show before. So, do they ever get to Island of Secrets? Do you know what I mean? If you're someone who, like David, I mean, how much Australian Survivor has David watched? But, like, you know, I don't know, anyone else. If you have to watch all of the Australian Survivor seasons, are you ever getting to Island of Secrets? Or are you just like, he's a dominant winner? I get it. You know, you really getting to like the crux of it.
If they started season 1 and they're just going to switch it off and go like, no, I can't do this. Yeah. Season 1 of SA, they'll just be like, oh, I'm done. Yeah. I'm tapping out. This is fine. No, I'm kidding. But anybody probably would have started at the reboot and gone from 6 onwards, right? So it's only
no one's doing that. Dino, you're thinking of you. You're thinking of you would maybe Lisa. But like the thing, no one on the cast is watching the entire reboot of Survivor South Africa, unfortunately.
Yeah.
If there were names out there, they're watching for the names. Like if Rob is a name that's out there, I think they could be watching Island of Secrets. And even then, I feel like they would watch a lot of other seasons that they are also behind on before they possibly get to Rob. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
You think who on this cast started watching from the reboot of Survivor South Africa in case one person from the entire reboot? I mean, what a journey they would have had. I'm jealous of them. What a fun time. But name one person on this cast. Maybe Lisa. Maybe George. Maybe. No one else is like, I'm watching 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 4 seasons of the show in case one. No one's doing that.
Yeah, I guess. At best, they're skimming Wikipedia for names.
Yeah.
Just to know where people ended, just to know where people finished, right? So that people can't go in there and go like, "Oh no, I was a pre-merge boot." No, you not. Yeah. You won. You dominated the whole thing. Right?
Yeah. Also, I feel like JLP on the mat is definitely like Rob Bentele, one of the most. You know, like this is what Australian Survivor does. He'd be like, Rob Bentele, one of the most dominant winners in Global Survivor. Like he would say that on the mat, I think. But anyway, so Rob's going to have the thing in common with the rest of the cast and that they aren't fans of Survivor. What else? Who are his people? Like who are the people? Because it's interesting because again, like he kind of like, he has a great bromance with Nathan, but then he's like so like at loggerheads with Dante. Like if you look at like a David, like is that two battering rams or like are two of the most charismatic, dominant winners ever linking up? Like how do we see that?
It's oh man, it's so hard to speculate on this one, right? And there's a part of me that thought about this, like if I was in his shoes, like how would I approach this? I go, okay, cool. You've got the three big US names, massive US names, very clear, obvious threats. They're linked by the US franchise in Parvati, Tony, Suri, and it's like, how do I survive this? Well, there's four of us that are all flying solo in the lesser known franchises, right? Do we band together and pick them off? Do you try and get in with them because they're the big names and you'd rather be with them than against them, same as the Migos? Like, I have no idea. Honestly, it would come down to like, how well can you, I don't know, how good a relationship can you have and build with as many people as you can in 3.5 minutes before the first three tribal councils, because it is a 16-day game as well.
Yeah.
You know, so like there's this element, like I always think about myself, like how much of this the first three boots were pre-game. The first 3 days of the game don't even matter. Those first 2 or 3 boots were predetermined before the game even happens. We don't like to think about those things, but we'd be silly not to think that there's an element of pre-gaming that would have happened, right? And it's like, so how do you potentially combat that if you aren't in that pre-game, you know? And if you aren't these big super fans, like it's unlikely that you aren't in that pre-game chat. Who's getting picked up? If it's the three of the US franchise that sticks together, who are they picking up as their fourth? Are you going with okay, cool, let's keep this tribe strong? And you look at Rob is probably the most physically imposing player there athletically. Like if you just look at him, you know, Tony's probably the next, but we know like Tony's not exactly like a challenge beast per se, but athletically able. But Rob's definitely the most. Say it again. Cass is fantastic.
Really good. But Cass is good for like the individual challenges. Like she's gonna be a sneaky threat getting to like the merge tomorrow. They're like very short game because she's like got endurance down pat and stuff like that.
But Rob looks like the more obvious one. So is it like, okay, cool, we keep him around because he can help us in the game? Or you go like, you know, that guy, don't care how charming he is, don't care how strategic, how he fits into my game. I can't beat him in an individual challenge. Let's get rid of him, you know? Or it's like, oh, this guy's going to be a great shield. Like, let's see, there's some other big boys or some other challenge beasts along the line. Some other, like you say, a Cass could potentially, I don't know how well the rest of the cast would know that if they know that she's an endurance beast, but you know, are there other, you know, like there's a David on the other side. We need another David to combat a David. Let's keep him around. I don't know what these players are going to be thinking, and honestly, I think the players going into, you know, day one, their thinking is going to change so rapidly because the game is going to move so rapidly. There's literally no time to think, only time to react. And who's that going to suit better? I don't know. I have no idea. This could go really, really well. It could go really, really poorly. It's, yeah. And that is why I'm not there, is because I'd probably just help me pull my way through. I'd probably just be overwhelmed. It's just overwhelming. Sensory overload.
It is a lot, even just watching it. I mean, I think for Rob, there's a lot of people I could see him connecting with. I think like the US people will be okay. I'm sure like Elisa wants to work with them. Like I can't see the 4 non-US people linking up. I don't know Tommy yet, but I can't really see like Rob and Lisa. Like I feel like they'll be more trying to get in with the US, and I don't even know if the US will be like a close 3. Like definitely like Suri and Parvati, but maybe like Tony is on the outs of that. So I don't think it's going to be like US versus world on that tribe. Will Rob get on with people on that tribe? Like I could see him getting on with a Cass, who's also Amazonian in her own right, like really good at challenges. She's fun. Pav, like I kind of feel like you get these like charismatic people together, like a David and a Rob if he gets to that point, and it's just like charisma explosion. Like, and as we've said, like he and Kirby have so much in common as these two people who, in different ways, and Kirby was like a lot looser and she didn't win, but like dominated as non-fans, like learned the game on the fly in like really exceptional ways. Like I can see those connections. I actually don't think that they'll, you know, push against each other. Like I actually think that I could see those relationships happening. But I think the biggest thing with Rob is in a short game, he is such a clear ticking time bomb of threat. Like just the way that Rob looks and how unprotected he is, I would assume from a connections perspective. I mean, this is, as we said, someone who, if it's going to be a lot about like pre-game relationships, like who are Rob's pre-game relationships? I don't even know if Rob's so tapped into the Survivor South Africa community, let alone this like global Survivor community. So I think that you look at someone like a Rob who's very, very helpful for the Australian Survivor pre-merge, right? On those like jewels, like he's doing amazing, but he doesn't really lend himself to the post-merge challenges, I don't think, as much. And maybe he's incredible physically, but he's always going to look like a massive threat. So I kind of feel like you come for Rob eventually, even though I can see these connections, and I feel like just like it'll just be like Charismageddon with him and a lot of these other people. But I still don't think he's, for me, I worry about his chances because there's so many connections and he has none of them.
Do you think like just from optically, so you've got like a Parvati who very attractive, very charismatic, right? Super strategic, charming, the same way Nicole is, right? Then you've got like a Sari and a Sipe, again, optically very similar, but then social gameplay machines, incredibly likable, super, super smart. There's these similarities. Do you think that Rob gravitates towards them naturally because that is some sense of familiarity that worked for him in the past? Do we think he gravitates towards that, or do you think he puts his guard up and goes, oh, potential danger here because we don't have the fillers of like the Doraus, the Marks, or in Saula's case, early days, it's like, well, if I band with these four, we don't have a Leanne or Paul on the outs that we can kind of keep on the outs. Like, does he gravitate towards that, or does he put his guard up and go from day one and go like, I'm here to play hard, I'm going down for the biggest mother effer here, and that's you guys. That's you, Tony. You're the two-time winner. I'm going for the biggest mother Jaka.
If he says that word, that's unfair. No, I think that, look, yeah, it is tough because a lot of people. It's interesting. You say he doesn't have the middle people. A lot of people just played with those people. You know, Tony Winners of War kind of just picked up those kind of like lower winners, and David just had like that kind of group of people. Like at least Rob had like the Amigos and then the outer layer. I mean, everyone was following him. But again, like, I feel like he had like his like circle of threats. And then he had like the outer layer of followers even more so. Where other people have just had followers who don't really exist on this cast at all. So I kind of feel like, you know, also beggars can't be choosers, you know? I think whoever wants to work with Rob, he should take. He doesn't really know people, but I do think he will, like the people that he innately connects with seem to be like beautiful, physical people. There's a lot of them on this cast. So I think that's it. I can see these kind of inherent connections, but I also just think he comes in too disconnected. Like he has too much ground to make up for me. That is really, really tough. So I'm not like super high on it. I think that either they see a merge coming on day 4 or whatever and they cut him, or like early into the merge, he just speaks for himself. Like that's kind of where I see it going for Rob. And I can't imagine it coming out any other way. But I mean, the way we've talked about him in this podcast, people might be surprised. I'm pretty sure he won fan favorite that season, right? He won a car.
Favorite.
He also won
the
hold on. Long car. What?
He got to he won a car for a month.
No, he won a car.
Oh, he won the car for fan favorite. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
this
is
what
it was.
In the challenge that he won, he got to have the car for a month, and then after the season, he won the car for fan favorites. Yes.
Yeah, because we were at the time, it was like, oh, is the car curse broken? Because what he won was he got to test drive the car for a month. I think he was like, yeah, I'll use it to help me move. I think that's what he said, which was hilarious. And then we were like, did he break the car curse? And then he wanted us a fan favorite, but also Amber got a car. Amber got a car in All Star, so that's already doesn't count. But then you actually broke the car curse, but Rob like kind of opened the car door.
No, Mahindra. It was Mahindra, right? Because he won the Mahindra challenge in season 7. Nicole Wilmans won this Mahindra challenge in season 8, and then I won the Mahindra challenge in season. She didn't win a car; she got a test drive. But in the challenge, that Mahindra appears as the title sponsor, that there is a car involved or a car referenced or a car shown on the scene. Every time that car was a Mahindra, that person went on to win the season. Just saying it.
Different car curse, car blessing.
Car blessing, yeah.
Mahindra blessing. I think the people who have never watched Survivor South Africa are like, why was there a car challenge that wasn't winning the car? Like, why wasn't that the prize? When Nicole wanted to just test drive it once ever? Was that it?
Just in the game.
Oh, it was just on the island. Just in the game.
She got to drive the car to the reward.
I miss Survivor South Africa so much. I really do. This has made me miss it. I want to argue about a Colby Rob for the rest of time, but we will have one player
So
coming back
he
now.
hasn't.
So yeah.
An interesting one, and I'm not sure if you've been covering it, but what I do like here is that all the players in this game. Okay, I can't speak to Quebec and Finnish Survivor, right? But I assume all of them are used to a longer format game, at the very least a 39-day game, right? At the very least, because all the Australian players play 5-6 decades long. I don't know, their game's just going forever.
Yeah, it's still going now, just every year, all year.
So there's gameplay experience. There's experience really makes a huge difference. So these players are going in as multi-time players versus one-time players. There is a definite advantage to being a multi-time player. Experience, just any extra days in the game helps, right? There's no doubt about that. But those are experienced to these longer format games. Are people adapting? Are they going in with a slightly different strategy because it's a 16-day game? Do they adapt to this format? Because the 16-day game is almost a different game in itself, right? I mean, for me, it's like poker, right? You've got a deep stack tournament where you've got a massive chip stack. Your blind levels are super long, so blinds are only escalating every so often, and that caters to your more skillful players generally in poker, right? Because you've got more time to play through bad patches. You've got more time to collect data about people. You use that against them, use it for yourself, set a table image, all those things, right? So that to me, like a normal Survivor season, is like a deep stack tournament that caters to the better players, right? Your short format is like a turbo tournament where you've got a chip stack, but your blind structures increase at very short increments very quickly. So you're forced into making moves earlier on, and there's a greater element of luck, right? There's still skill, but now there's a greater element of luck. The game swings far quicker. And this is what it feels like to me, this format of the game, right? So it's who does the best at adapting to ensure that luck falls in their favor. And is Rob somebody who goes like, okay, cool, who's so deep in terms of building relationships? And that's like, I mean, as strategic and as physical as he was, the reason his game dominated so hard was because of the social bonds. That was first and foremost his in my mind, the key to dominating the game, right? Now you don't have that time to form those deep social bonds, those social connections. Does he adapt his game to the 16-day format? You know, I feel like a Tony Vlad, because he thrives in chaos, and George thrives in chaos. So the more chaotic, the better. You know, like they're like, can make it a 5-day game, make it 5 hours. I don't care. You know, we'll out hustle our way, and they're so quick to the to the punch, right? So I mean, who does this game cater for, and does Rob thrive, or does it derail him slightly?
I mean, no one can prepare for it because it's absurd. I do think, Rob has every card, right? And I'm not going to do the poker thing, but like he can pull any card. I do think he's behind socially and will not have time to make it up. But then it's like, if Rob gets to the merge, he could just win every challenge. Like, yes, it is a physical cast who have had a lot of different challenge beasts, but he's up there globally probably. So it's like he could get there and just win out, and maybe people respect that. But I think that they'll always know that. Like, I think they're going to like anticipate that and vote him out because he looks as he does. So yeah, I think it is a tricky one. I think Rob was very capable in like long-term cult maintenance. And it's hard because he's not going to create a cult here at all. And he doesn't need to create it over 39 days. So his bag of tricks is limited. It'll be more about like connecting with people on a much more equal level, I think. And the thing about Rob that I find so interesting is he's played this one season, which in this, even though he's a winner, which is kind of few and far between on this season, that's like actually a small amount of experience for this cast. Yes. Other people who've played multiple different types of reality TV games, multiple seasons of Survivor, like, yes, he's won, but he's won in one type of way of dominating, controlling every vote. He's had a lot of the experience. He's obviously ticked many, many things off the bucket list. Mm-hmm. But I look at people who have had to play in, different configurations of people, or people who have been blindsided, and like Tony learned from losing in Game Changers, and he came back and did well at Winners at War. Like, people who have been through the hard knocks in Survivor and other shows have that varied experience, whereas Rob played one type of way exceptionally well over one season of Survivor. That is small as a Survivor winner, as an exceptional Survivor winner, but that is small in this cast. So I do wonder if it's about adaptability, he's actually got less experience in that because other people have had to adapt to literally different show formats, compared to one season of the show.
Who are the multi-time players? So all the US
Everyone.
castmates.
And not even that. Not Lisa. So Lisa.
So Lisa,
the 4
Quebec,
world people.
the 4 world people are all one-time players, right?
One-time players, true. But then if you look at the Australians,
aside from Kirby, everyone's.
Janine's been, Sarah's been on the face, and Janine has been on. She wasn't a contestant. She was on The Apprentice, and
The Apprentice.
Shawnee's been on every season of Survivor pretty much since 2018. Like Luke has played Big Brother and The Traitors and 2 seasons of exceptionally long Australian Survivor, and Dave, Dondi, all of that, and Kirby 1 season. However, to talk through this, but it's not just whether they've played 1 season. I think it's about the experience. Like I think in some ways, like talk about your Survivor experience. You won and you played 2 seasons, but even on the 1 season you won, you are the underdog, and then you got victory. Like you bobbed and weaved. Like you understand being on the bottom to getting to the top. Like Rob, pretty much, other than like a swap where they never really went to tribal council, and I'm kind of vague on the swap, but like he was in danger. He wasn't in danger. He was called out as a name, but he was like always in control. Like even Kirby, who's played 1 season, like that season she was, up and down. Like a million things happened to Kirby by the swap even. Sarah, her game was all over the place. Like I just think it's a little bit different having experienced the full experience of the game. And like to Rob's exceptional credit, he experienced winning alone. You know what I mean? Like even people who win sometimes don't just like win the whole season. And I just think that's a little bit of a difference. I think it's interesting to see how he comes out of leading lambs to the slaughter, dominating so comprehensively pretty much the entire season and wins, compared to other people who are like, I know what it's like to be blindsided, or I know what it's like to have an ally go home, or you know what I mean? He just had so much control. Derogatory. I don't know how this is a knock against him, but it kind of is.
I think what I will say though is look, I 100% agree that the experience thing is huge in this game, right? And any days of experience are great, and absolutely players who have found themselves in more challenging spots probably have developed experience and a greater range of skill sets in bobbing and weaving, right? Which he may not have had to have developed because he was so freaking strong and dominant, right? But if he can find his footing in the game, I think he'll be super well received by the audience. I think Australian Survivor watchers would love him because he does have that well-rounded gameplay, and he's a physical
beautiful
machine, and he's fantastic to look at. Super. He's got a great wit, and he's quite funny as well. I mean, he's got some great confessionals. So he's a great storyteller, really good in confessionals. It sounds like I've got a man crush, right? But I think he's going to really make a mark on the Australian or Australian Survivor audience if he can find his footing in the game. I think early days he needs to find traction. He needs to find his people, find them early, find them quick, and just gain a bit of traction. I think, having chatted to you now, thinking about the players, their dynamics, their experience, I'd be a bit concerned that he doesn't find that early enough on, and that puts him at risk, and then you're relying on some sort of challenge wins to keep you safe. Man, it's giving me the fear. I feel like I'm about to go play this game against all these Titans, and I'm going like, how the fuck do you stand a chance? Like, how do you stand a chance? Like, you've just given me the fear. So it must be incredibly intimidating to be any of the 4 world players. It must be incredibly intimidating to go out there as a solo, nobody else from any of your franchise, one-time player, and the 3 other people on your tribe are like these absolute legends, and then everybody on the opposing tribe has the CVs you've just blurted out. It is terrifying. It is terrifying.
No, not for Rob. Rob doesn't understand the gravity of Suri. Like, that's the best thing. It's like, the blissful oblivion.
That is an insult to Suri, Tony, and Parvati. It's an absolute insult to think that even somebody who's not a fan of the show, who's played once, even they know exactly who they are and how big they are. There's no way.
There's no way Rob does not understand Parvati.
Post-season interview, postseason interview with the player, you've got to ask and unpack how much you
understand
knew
the
about.
gravity?
Did you understand the gravity of these players?
The gravitoni.
Box of donuts, gravitoni.
Yeah.
Box of
Yeah.
donuts. Box of donuts says he
Okay.
understood it more than he
I
didn't.
Well, I have 15 minutes in X interview. Rob, did you understand the level of players that you had on your drive? Do you understand that there were fans who would have killed for this opportunity? No, we're very
And then we'll
excited
leave
for
it to
Rob.
your then we'll leave it to your following post that interview to determine whether he did or didn't.
He'll be like, "Did you want to ask about my game?" I'm like, "No, I have donuts on the line." Okay.
They are fucking donuts.
Did we expect for this to be over an hour? No, but did we need to debate the season 6 years later? Yes, we did. Dino, thank you so much. This was so fun. Did you feel good? Do you feel better about Rob's chances than I do? Which is good because you're the Rob expert here on this podcast, so it's good.
Yes and no. I think Rob's got everything that he needs. I think also, like you say, he's played 6 years ago, so there's a natural maturing, and just maturing as a person puts you in better state for a game like this. So
he was
I think
28, so yeah, he was kind of like
Rob's,
me. Now he's
exactly.
Now he's in
So
his
Rob's got a
30s.
great toolbox. He's got a great toolbox full of skills. Maybe there's experience from the bottom that he lacks a little bit. But outside of that, he's got every natural tool that you need to do well in this game. I think pre-game determines a lot. And I think day 1 and 2 are make or break for him. But if he can find his footing, geez, there's no reason why he can't go the distance. And I think you can say that about anyone on this cast, right? And that's the beauty of a cast like this.
Yeah, I shouldn't underestimate him because I think he's exceptional. Like I think he played one of the best games of all time. However, like so did multiple people on this cast, but it's a very challenging cast, whether he knows it or not. It's a tough spot. He's up there with them 100%. We'll see how it goes. We'll see it in a very, very different way for him. Yeah.
Oh, you're an Olympian that only won 1 gold medal. Here's the other Olympians that have a world record in 2 gold medals.
That one season in what I'm calling the best newbie game of all time. When were you on Dundee, Rob? When were you on Dundee? So
watch the space. Maybe this is his ticket to Deal or No Deal Island and the challenge and all those good things. Maybe this is his entry to those experiences.
This is probably his ticket to like Married at First Sight Australia. People like bring him over here. That might happen. But Dino, thank you so much for being the Rob expert. It's so fun to talk Survive South Africa with you. Where can people follow you and what you're doing?
They can follow me on Instagram, that guy Dino. I don't really post too much too regularly, but I do respond to the odd DM here and there if anybody wants to chat, as I always say. We'll be looking to be a bit more active during the season because I'm really looking forward to the season. And thank you very much for having me, Shannon. It's always fun to chat with you and fun being wrong. And I will admit that I'm wrong even when I don't know I'm wrong. So I'm really sorry for all the wrong opinions I've thrown out here to anybody listening. But it's always a pleasure, and I always have the most fun. So thank you for always thinking of me. I really appreciate it.
The fandom are on your side with the Nicole thing, I think. So yeah, we'll see. Don't at me. Just assume Dino is right. But these podcasts are coming out every 2 days. The Australian Survivor World Tour. We're covering all the players. And follow me at Shannon Gates, WeKnowGlobalSurvivor.com, so that you subscribe to the feed so that you don't miss any of this. And then eventually the season will start. At this stage, we don't know when. And maybe by the time this comes out, we will. Everything's going well, everyone. Everything is well planned. So thank you all. Thank you to our team behind the scenes. Thank you, Dino. And I will see you next time. Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.